Welcome to Hannity. Tonight, we are investigating the dangerous trend of radical Muslims on the march around the globe. For the entire hour, we're going to be joined by Middle East and military experts, as well as pundits from both sides of the aisle. Now, before we bring them in, here are a few disturbing examples of what we are talking about. Take a look.
Iraq's biggest oil refinery has been shut down over security concerns as Islamic militants continue to capture new territory. The extremists have also posted more videos online showing gruesome acts of violence.
The U.S., the U.K., and France are all joining the effort to search for the nearly 300 girls who were kidnapped from a Nigerian school by the Islamic terror group Boko Haram. Now, this comes after the leader of that organization threatened to sell the girls into slavery. In addition to the kidnapping, the same extremists attacked a northeastern Nigerian town yesterday, leaving at least 100 dead. 50 bodies have been recovered thus far.
At the Breezeview Hotel in Mpakatoni, where football fans had gathered to cheer on the World Cup Sunday night, eyewitnesses told us about 50 men walked in and opened fire. They didn't stop there. This small coastal town was under assault for hours. Homes and hotels torched, people shot and hacked to death.
Kenyan officials call the attack an act of terrorism. The al-Qaeda-linked extremist group al-Shabaab reportedly claiming responsibility. Witnesses say the terrorists were on a mission to kill non-Muslims, ordering shoppers to speak Arabic or recite a verse from the Quran in order to save their lives.
According to the Communion of Churches in Indonesia, at least 430 churches have been attacked, closed down or burnt down since 2004. On the 27th of January 2013, his church was attacked again and he was beaten. 2 days later, Pastor Bernard, not his attackers, was sentenced to 3 months in prison for running an unregistered church.
This was, in fact, a brutal terror attack in London in daylight. Eyewitnesses say the victim was attacked to death by the attackers using knives and a hatchet. And then, while the victim was left lying on the street, as you noted, Neil, that one of the attackers pronounced Islamist political slogans, including, it is said, Allah Akbar.
All right, and we bring in our studio audience for reaction tonight. Hi, welcome everybody. Good to see you. Everybody see the video of ISIS slaughtering even in front of children in the name of religion. We saw that, right? Yeah. We see ISIS on the march. We see what's happening in Iraq. We've all witnessed now the rise of radicalism in Iraq. How many of you saw in Kenya the 48 bodies stacked on top of each other? You all see that video? Okay. How many of you saw what happened? We're now told the former Nigerian president said that it's unlikely we'll get those girls back, those schoolgirls. Everybody aware of that? All in the name of radical Islam, right? Then we've got in Afghanistan, what, 11 men, fingers chopped off. They dared to vote in the general election. That just happened recently. Indonesia, you heard about the report, 430 churches burned. Let me start with Carl Higbee and Jonathan Gilliam. Both of you former Navy SEALs. Both of you have fought on the ground. Are we seeing the rise of radical Islam in a way that's even worse than what we saw after 9/11, or what led up to 9/11?
Absolutely. What happened in 9/11 was a buildup of a long time, but now we've gone into those countries, we've made even more people angry by fighting the war on their terms and, you know, wishy-washy policies between two presidencies. I think we're going to see an even steeper rise in violence because of it.
And I think we're called radical. The reality is we should start calling it for what it is. It's not necessarily terrorism, it's not necessarily radical. It is a global movement called the Caliphate. And what you see when we go over and we fight these little skirmishes and we occupy bases and leave, we create a vacuum and we basically do the dirty work for these really, really bad people who want to go and change the face of the globe.
That's what interesting General Petraeus said this week about, you know, we can't become the Air Force for one side over the other in the Shia-Sunni battle that's been ongoing.
Where we've created the vacuum, we now have to go back in and seal that vacuum.
Mike Gauss, welcome. I'm glad you're feeling better. You weren't feeling well for a while. Welcome back to the debate. It's good to have you. You like to always say when you're on the program, you are a moderate Muslim.
Yes, I am.
Have the voices of the Islamic community, are they loud enough to take on the radicalism that's hijacking their religion?
Well, they're not loud enough. We need to gather momentum. Shows like yours have given voices to moderate Muslims like me, and it is good. And we need to gather up momentum, get more Muslims to start speaking, to let those radicals know that we don't care about them, there are very few, and there is no encouragement for them, and they shouldn't do what they're doing.
But your voice, to me, is unique. I don't think, well, Judith Miller, you're shaking your head no. You hear a lot of moderate Muslim voices speaking out against radicalism and terrorism and the hijacking of religion, because the world I live in, I see a lot of people that are afraid they're going to be labeled an apostate, which means that they would be subject to death, right, under Islam?
I think that is the problem. It is the fear that so many Muslims who are moderate, who do agree with what you're saying and what Brigitte's saying and what others are saying, the fear they have of speaking out, of the reaction of their own community, until we get and win that battle inside, and only they can win it. We're going to go on creating the impression that the Islamists, the jihadists, are the majority, and they are not.
Is that right, Brigitte?
Not necessarily, because if the majority are peaceful, loving Muslims, then what do they have to worry about in their own community? Look at the Muslims in the United States. If there was ever a group of people who are protected under our Constitution to speak freely and be protected, and supposedly the majority of them are moderate, how come they are not bonding together? And if any radical hurt any of them when they speak up in defense of the United States, the radicals should be
squashed. So you're saying Mike is an anomaly? Mike Gauss, you've debated him many times on my show. Is he an anomaly?
Mike, no. There are people like Mike, but where are the funders of people like Mike? Where is the funding? You're going to tell me there's not one mega millionaire from Saudi Arabia or the Islamic world that can give Mike $5 million and say, you know what, I believe in your moderate message. I want to help you build a grassroots organization.
Where does CARE get its funding?
Exactly. CARE got its funding from the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
Well, CARE is not getting, I think they used to get the funding from Middle East, but they're not. But the moderate Muslims are gaining momentum. There are more and more people. I'm in the community, Muslim community. There is a lot of support for what I'm doing.
Does the Muslim community support me? Because I've been very outspoken against radicalism and Sharia and the treatment of women under Sharia. When you talk to people, they love the show.
Absolutely. Those Muslims, there are many I have talked, and I told them very clearly what you said earlier, that you distinguish between radical Muslims and Muslims and Islams.
But I'm afraid that the more moderate Muslims are afraid to speak out, and I think the numbers that have been radicalized are far greater numbers than we see, which is why we're watching. We're doing this special, because this to me, you know, when you see people laid out as we saw this week and slaughtered, cold blood murder, or the people, you know, that we saw, the 48 people in Kenya that were slaughtered in cold blood because they didn't give the right answer. That, to me, is the equivalent of a modern-day Nazi. Pam Geller.
Well, I think that Mr. Gauss lives in his own private Islam. He doesn't have a theological leg to stand on. We saw, not just in Kenya, but we saw in the Westgate Mall, and we saw in Iraq, that the jihadists were separating who they would slaughter and who they wouldn't. They were separating the Muslims from the non-Muslims. Longtime readers of my website, Atlas Shrugs, are not surprised by these developments. This was expected. Obama has been aiding a jihadist agenda. Came out yesterday under a Freedom of Information Act, the close ties that Obama had with Libya, Muslim Brotherhood, who were involved in the attack on our embassy. That's the real smoking gun that Christopher Stevens had met with the Libyan Muslim Brotherhood in July, the same people that were involved in the Benghazi murder. The idea that there are moderates, there are moderate Muslims that secretly agree. According to so many worldwide and national polls, there are many that support jihad.
Let me bring up a political question, and I'll throw it to my good friend Tamara Holder. Hi, Tamara.
Hi, Sean.
Because under this president, it seems very clear. He recently this week let out radicals in Afghani prisons. We know that we had the Bergdahl swap, for example. 5 of the most hardened criminals, terrorists, detainees. Why would the president do this? Why would the president sit back, pull out of Iraq, and city after city where so many Americans shed their blood to help save Iraq and turn Iraq around into an ally of the United States? One by one, those cities are falling.
Right. The reason why the president did that was because we had an American soldier who was held captive, and he made an exchange, which of course you would never agree with, because nothing the president does you would agree with. But you, ma'am, I think are the most dangerous person in society.
Which ma'am?
With the Heritage Foundation.
No, she's not. Brigitte, she's with Act for America.
Act. I'm sorry. With Act. I think that you are the most dangerous person because to say things like moderate Muslims supposedly are not terrorists, supposedly are not dangerous. The majority of Muslims in this country and in this world are safe, loving, people who want peace and who want to protect. Those Nigerian girls were Muslim, by the way, as well. It wasn't just Boko Haram. It was those Nigerian girls.
But we're not hearing from the moderates. Regular Americans, lay people, think that they have a negative opinion of the Muslim people because we are only hearing about the murders. We're only hearing about the terrorists. We don't hear from the moderates because they're afraid to speak out. So you to jump on it's not because of conversations.
Yes,
and it shouldn't be up to us to defend moderate Muslims. They should be speaking out themselves.
The difference between me and you is I am fluent in the Arabic language, and I walk into the mosques in this country and I understand what they say. I walk into Arabic grocery stores in this country.
I was just in New Jersey, in New York. 2 weeks, ma'am. I spent a lot of time in a Muslim country, so don't tell me that I don't understand.
My mother tongue is Arabic. I know what they're saying. I know how the society operates.
So are you saying that the majority of Muslims are terrorists?
I'm not saying that the majority of Muslims. I'm not saying the majority of Muslims are terrorists, and I did not say that. There are moderate Muslims. The terrorists are only 15 to 25%. That leaves no, it's not less than that. The world events shows you the facts. The facts speak louder than words. But there are 75% moderate Muslims in the world. The moderate Muslims.
Is she a danger by calling out radicalism, or is it the people that would strap bombs on their own children in the name of jihad and holy war and a promise? Excuse me, Sean. In the promise of 72 virgins, who's more dangerous?
Radical Islamists are very dangerous. They are just as dangerous as a person who spews hate and tries to change a message, a Muslim message, that the majority of moderate Muslims are somehow
all right, let me go
terrorists.
here.
You know what's so dangerous about this? You're a very dangerous person, because these are heroes standing up for the victims of Islam. And let me tell you, I study how sociopaths behave, how psychopaths behave. We see this in the unholy alliance right now with the left and Islam. What they do is, when a vicious ideology, totalitarian ideology, attacks us and we're victims, what these people do is they make the perpetrator the victim and the victim the perpetrator. So heroes like Pamela Geller, that made a memorial grove for Aqsa Parvez, a 16-year-old Muslim girl. She stood up for the memory of a murdered, honor-killing victim and made a memorial grove for her in Jerusalem Park. And thank you that you did that, Pamela. And she's called an Islamophobe. She's called a hater. So what's happening here is these are the heroes standing up for the victims of Islam, but what we have is an unholy alliance between the left and Islam, and they're making the heroes the perpetrators.
Guys,
and you're dangerous. You're dangerous by shutting us up about talking the evil that we face.
We got to take a break. We're going to come back. Don't go anywhere, because our audience obviously is just getting warmed up. And coming up next tonight here on Hannity.
Begin withdrawing before our commanders tell us we're ready would be dangerous for Iraq, for the region, and for the United States.
The Obama administration was warned, but they didn't listen, and the escalating chaos in Iraq is a product of their ignorance. We'll get our studio audience reaction. And life for women under Sharia. What is that like? That debate coming up straight ahead. Welcome back to this audience edition of Hannity. Radical Muslims on the march. Now, as the situation in Iraq continues to spiral out of control and as ISIS continues to take over more and more cities each and every day, Democrats are doing their level best to try and cover for President Obama. Now, here's why. Americans were warned what would happen if the Obama administration pulled troops out of Iraq too early. Take a look.
Begin withdrawing before our commanders tell us we're ready would be dangerous for Iraq, for the region, and for the United States. It would mean surrendering the future of Iraq to al-Qaeda. It mean that we'd be risking mass killings on a horrific scale.
You could see in the Shia South the Iranians reaching over and grabbing to take power. You could see in the Sunni Northwest the al-Qaeda folks taking power and taking leadership in that area and establishing a base for terror that could be awful for us for many, many years indeed.
Now, their predictions have sadly become our reality, but we shouldn't be surprised that Democrats don't listen, because when it comes to war, instead of doing what is in our best national security interests, well, liberals have often turned to politics. For example, watch this.
There is no reason, Bob, that young American soldiers need to be going into the homes of Iraqis in the dead of night
terrorizing kids and children, women.
As long as we follow the president's path in Iraq, the war is lost.
This war must end. The American people have lost faith in the president's conduct of the war.
The American people have spoken. The Congress has voted as of today to end this war.
There's no military solution to this. We've got to have a political solution, begin a phased withdrawal, and make certain that we've got benchmarks in place so that the Iraqi people can make a determination about how they want to move forward.
Now, the left proves time and time again that they are the party that's going to do and say anything about the country, about our brave troops, regardless of the negative impact that rhetoric has both here and abroad. Joining us now, we bring back our studio audience. KT, you've been watching this. You've been watching ISIS on the move in Iraq, and you see city after city that brave men like those two guys in the back fought for, and 4,000 Americans gave their lives for, fall one right after the other.
We gave Afghanistan and Iraq democracy on a silver platter. We won it for them. We did it with the hopes that they would become inclusive, religiously tolerant, they would become democracies, and our friends in the Middle East. They didn't want it. It hasn't worked. They either couldn't do it or they won't do it. I don't see that
Why do you blame them? I blame us because, as President Bush said, if we would have stayed there, if we would have given them the intelligence, if we would have trained them, we wouldn't be where we are today.
You know, you're absolutely right, but what the debate is in Washington now is everybody's blaming everybody else. The Republicans are saying Obama pulled out too soon. The Democrats are saying the original sin was George Bush. There's plenty of blame to go around. I think we are where we are, and the question is, what do you do going forward?
You don't want to do it. You don't want to stay there. You don't want.
I think protect the homeland, become energy independent. The Middle East is funded by clear our border, make sure, and stop the political correctness in enforcing and looking for who the terrorists are. We're looking at 350 million Americans. We're all treating them the same.
Amber.
Let's look for the people who are the terrorists.
We did pull out of Iraq too soon in 2011. It was a completely political decision. President Obama wanted to be the president that ended the Iraq war no matter what the terms. We left Iraq and the Iraqi government unstable and unable to protect themselves from these groups like ISIS coming in and seeing this opportunity and seizing it.
So Obama blew it. In other words, if he would have listened to Bush, and by the way, it wasn't boots on the ground, it wasn't fighting, it was intelligence, and it was training.
He cared more about his own self-image than the future of Iraq and the American soldiers that sacrificed so much in that country.
Bartel?
KT
is Syria, by the way, right?
I spent a great deal of time in Syria, Iraq, and most of many of their neighbors. KT's a very dear friend, but I disagree with her. But I beg to differ with her point that that Iraq and Afghanistan
the gentle lady from New York. All right,
have rejected democracy. Afghanistan isn't so much on our plate right now in this discussion, but their elections were pretty successful, and it's quite possible that if it's allowed to proceed fairly, that Abdullah, probably the good guy from our point of view, wins. Iraq, much more pressing right now. April 30th, only a month and a half ago, Iraq had its fourth national parliamentary election. It was once again a turnout of over 60%.
Look at all the cities that fell.
Sure, it might sound fine, Sean. It might sound crazy to talk about democracy in Iraq today, but we have to remember that Iraqis turn out in huge numbers for the polls every time they have a chance.
They're not in charge right now, are they? They're not winning the battle for Fallujah and Mosul.
If we stop propping up the Maliki regime, we will see.
I'm not talking about propping up anything. I am worried about, all of that sacrifice. Has it been for nothing because this president had a political agenda? Kirsten, you want to jump in? Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I think that you make a great point, and that is that, yes, there has been democracy to some extent, but it has to do with the current prime minister and the policies that were put in place. If you have a democracy, but you have, leaders that are engaging in corrupt practices, or they are eliminating or not letting the Sunnis, in this example, have a stake in their government, then of course they're going to be upset. And that's one of the reasons why ISIS has achieved so much success in the northern part of that country, is because they've been able to build some tenuous ties with Baathists, who formerly they hated one another, in order to gain more territory, because the Sunnis don't feel like they have a stake in their government. If we can help with that, we can help that country.
Todd and Andy, I want to hear from you guys.
Sean, I'm concerned about the story that's really not being covered here, and that is the systematic extermination of Christians in the Middle East. We have seen thousands and thousands of Christians slaughtered. Back in the 1990s, there were 1.2 million Christians in Iraq. Now they estimate around 300,000. Who do you think all those folks are that are running for their lives right now? Those are Christians. I write about this on my book.
430 churches in in
430
Indonesia?
That's right. Those churches are being burned. I write about this in my book, God Bless America. This is a very serious situation, and we need to pay very close attention because what's happening in the Middle East, we're starting to see it happen in Europe, and you better believe it's going to start happening in our back door before too long.
Andy?
Yes, Sean, I tend to agree with KT. If you look at, we have hard metrics about all the things we've been talking about. These brave guys have been talking about the caliphate. 2/3 of the Muslims from Morocco to Indonesia are in favor of establishing a caliphate. That's not a tiny minority of extremists. They may have idealized visions about what that actually entails,
Are you saying
but it's
that
objective.
the majority of the
We have
Islamic
hard polling
world
data.
is radicalized? I mean, is that what you're saying? I mean, speak plainly.
That's not radicalized to their standard. To our standard, it absolutely is.
So
if they
from our
want a
standard,
calephate,
it's radicalized.
We're unwilling to admit. We are honestly unwilling to admit that they are radicalized. I mean, the fact of the matter is, KT said we handed them democracy on a silver platter.
Exactly.
The bottom line is they're not intelligent enough or accountable enough
I don't know if I said
to institute the democracy that we were bringing to them.
Politically correct. What do you mean by not intelligent enough?
You know, you can call me politically incorrect, whatever you want. The fact of the matter is that society is the cradle of civilization. They are not accountable or intelligent enough to understand Western democracy as we tried to impose.
No, I have to respond to that, and that is that the cultural tradition has not been one formerly that has been suited for democracy because the civic associations aren't there, the community building isn't there, and they've gone from military regimes to Islamist regimes. But there is hope with democracy. No, technology has wait, if I can just finish, I have hope for the next generation because technology has done a lot to democratize these countries and inspire the next generation of young people to be more moderate, and I think with time you will see that region transform because of young people. They are doing it.
People up. Democratize to impose the Sharia.
Sean,
I mean, 91% of Iraqis, after we liberated the place, want the Sharia. These are hard metrics from Pew. 99% of the Afghans want the Sharia. That may be democracy to them.
We will come back. We'll continue more of this epic Hannity show, and we got a showdown between Brigitte Gabriel and Saba Ahmed regarding the clear and present danger of radical Islam. And if you thought last night's conversation was heated, wait until you see part 2. And then later, New York City officials react to the threat posed by this man, the head of ISIS, who said upon his release, quote, "I'll see you guys in New York City." What exactly does that mean, and how concerned should people be here at home? Our experts weigh in. We're glad you're with us. And welcome back to this audience edition of Hannity. Now, last night on this program, we had a heated Hannity debate between Brigitte Gabriel and Saba Ahmed about the danger of radical Islam. Here's part 2 of their epic showdown.
If she is truly a moderate Muslim, she needs to stand up for women's rights. She needs to stand up for those who beat women, who kill women, who maim women, who genitally mutilate women. She needs to stand up and speak out about the kidnapping of the girls by Boko Haram that you are not speaking for. You are taking your place while you have access to the media, and you are here obviously because of your deception and lies and what you did at the Heritage Foundation, so you can point the light to the issue of the Islamic. And thank you so much for bringing that out. Use that opportunity to speak about where are the girls that were kidnapped by your own co-religionists. As a Muslim woman, it is people like you who needs to stand up.
Ms. Ahmed, we'll give you the last word.
I have been speaking out against Boko Haram kidnappings. We have been. And I just want to clarify one point. You mentioned about me being friends with the convicted terrorist. I've never even met him. I saw him once at the court. And I was a Muslim community spokesperson in Oregon. And obviously, a mosque burned down right after his arrest. So we were suffering a lot of hate crimes.
Please. There's plenty of information that people can easily find on Google by just typing your name.
Well, I'm telling you the truth from my side. I'm sure there are a lot of people say a lot of things.
You and the word truth need to be in the same sentence, Saba. Let's be very clear about this.
Well, I think you're misguided, and I think you're the ones who needs to hear the truth from Muslims.
I'm very clear, and I don't mince words, and I don't beat around the bush, and I know my facts.
All right,
do you know any Muslims?
Yes, I do. A lot. Remember, I was born and raised in the Middle East.
I know. I wrote about you. You're Noor Saman.
I'm very familiar with your writing.
How many Muslim friends do you have here in the U.S.?
I do have friends here in the U.S.
I'd like
that's
to talk
beside
to
the
them.
point. That is beside the point. That's beside the point. As a patriotic American, I use the opportunity that I have to shine the light about how I can protect my fellow American citizens, because I am an American first, and my loyalty is for this country. And anything happens to any American, I'm the first person to stand up, defend them, fight for them. You are not. Your loyalty is somewhere else. It's about time we see more patriotism from the Muslim community and less terrorism.
Brigitte, I'm an American, and I'd like you to defend me.
I defend people who are worth defending. I don't defend liars and deceivers. I defend patriots who love this country and are willing to put their lives on the line to protect it. You are not. Your loyalties are to defend a terrorist who wanted to blow up a Christmas tree lighting in Oregon and kill many Americans. Shame on you.
Brigitte, every defense lawyer has to defend somebody, okay? I don't think you've studied criminal law too well.
You are an activist. You are far more than just a defense lawyer. You are an activist with shady national security and shady character. Let's take the gloves off and speak the truth, Saba. This time, you're dealing with Brigitte Gabriel. You're not dealing with somebody timid that you can manipulate and talk over. Not this time, Saba. People like you need to be put in their place. This is America. We love our country, and we will fight for our country and protect her from people exactly like you, and expose people exactly like you.
Wow, Brigitte, you just sound very, very angry.
No,
I think you need some reality
check. I'm not
angry. I did want to make a point. Ramadan's coming up, so please do visit a local mosque wherever you live. I hope you get to meet a few other Muslims besides me and learn some, meet some peaceful Muslims.
I have a lot of outstanding, wonderful Muslim friends.
Good. So go talk to them.
Very much different than you.
Okay, well, but I'd love to meet you too. Let's meet up here. You know, I think we need to talk to each other without screaming. And we're
not screaming, we are talking passionately.
Now you're calming down, but from the beginning you were very, very loud, and I don't know what was going on, but now you're starting to calm down,
because
which is good.
I don't allow liars to speak over me, because I put the truth out. I will not let you go unchallenged.
You are so mean. Did someone ever tell you?
Children? I'm a terrorism analyst, darling. I debate you. You're a lawyer. Meanness has nothing to do with logic. We're having a logical, factual conversation. So let's leave the little girl play that you're trying to pull aside. I'm a businesswoman. I don't play like that.
I know. I can see you're a businesswoman, and you're using your whatever twisted logic to make profits off of Muslims.
No, I'm not making profit off of Muslims whatsoever.
I think you need to stop it.
As a matter of fact, I'm here. I'm not getting paid a dime. I feel privileged. I have the opportunity to set the record straight when there are liars like you trying to put the lies out.
Brigitte, a lot of lives have been lost since 9/11 because of these fear tactics.
No,
we need to stop
this. I'm
so sick and tired of
because of people like you who are not standing up to the radicals and stopping them in their tracks. You're not standing up. You are defending a convicted terrorist. You socialize with them. Don't play games, Saba. We are on national television. It's about time the Muslim community stands up, stop the lies, stop the political correctness,
we need to stop
and start calling a spade a spade.
And that's why I want you to get your facts straight. I'm telling you exactly what
are very straight.
All right, guys, we're gonna have to leave it there. Thank you both for being with us. Appreciate it. And coming up, while all eyes are on the terrorist takeover of Iraq, should we be worried here at home? Coming up next, details on a chilling threat made by the leader of ISIS, directed at the residents of New York City. How should America respond? We'll check in with our studio audience next. They'll react to that and much more as our Hannity investigation, Radical Muslims on the March, continues. Welcome back to this audience edition of Hannity. Now, while ISIS continues to tear through Iraq, there are new concerns about the leader of this terror group, who some are calling the next bin Laden. Al-Baghdadi was in U.S. custody until 2009, and upon his release, he made a chilling remark to the American commander at the prison where he was being held. His name is Colonel Kenneth King, and he recently had this to say on Fox News.
When we handed him off, he knew we were from New York, and he knew he was going to get out, in my mind, because as he left, he told us, he told me and the soldiers that were around me, I'll see you in New York.
Now, New York City Mayor Comrade Bill de Blasio addressed the concern at a press conference on Tuesday. Take a look at this.
We're certainly aware of the statements that he made. We don't take any threat lightly. I've said many times, we know we are sadly the #1 terror target in the world. That continues. That will continue for quite a while. And we plan with that assumption in mind. We resource the NYPD with that assumption in mind. And we are constantly vigilant because we know of that reality.
All right, we turn it over to our studio audience for a reaction. Let me go to Carl and Jonathan here, our Navy SEAL experts. You guys were on the front line, so I think what you have to say is very, very relevant to the discussion here. You heard that threat. Let's say, assume for a second here that Iraq continues to fall. Let's say that that becomes what, a training ground for the next bin Laden?
Safe haven.
The latest safe haven, training ground. Apparently they took hundreds of millions of dollars as they've been conquering city after city, right?
Sean,
so is that a real, clear, present danger for America?
It's no clearer than it was yesterday. The fact is, this is a movement that's going forward. I was in the FBI after I left the SEAL teams here in New York for 8 years. And, you know, I never lived in Iraq or any of these places over there, but what I was is trained as an unconventional warrior. I took that experience and went in the FBI, and I looked at things from an attacker's point of view. And I'm here to tell you all, whether you have hope in the youth of Iraq or you have hope in the political system, these people that are fighting, this is the third great uprising of the caliphate. It's not going away. And they're going to just keep pushing
really
forward.
Addressing what Kirsten said in the last segment about hope for the young
you
people.
Can't, when you fight an enemy...
2 segments ago, yeah.
Sean, when we go through a house, we're looking at hands. We don't look at the person. We look at their hands, see if they have a weapon.
Right, Carl?
Right, but at the same time that you acknowledge that there might be threats, you know, that there are threats, you know, and you acknowledge, you know, what could be so that you can defend yourself. You also build infrastructure for the, you know, for the future. So you build hope. You build for the good too. You defend and you put good things into the world as well.
You and I usually agree, so we don't often disagree. Yes. But I think what they're saying is that they don't see that hope, and they were there and on the ground. Carl, I want you to respond to that.
Yeah, I was there in 2007 and 2009 and back again in 2010. And the fact of the matter is, we did build schools for these guys. We did build anything that they needed, power plants, you name it. And the fact of the matter is, they blew them up. They blew them up.
Jamie, go ahead.
But the problem is that Islamic Jihad is on the march. We have an administration that brought the Muslim Brotherhood into the government, and we have taken Islam, radical Islam, we have taken jihad, all of that out of our intelligence manuals because the Muslim Brotherhood told us to. How can we defend ourselves when Nidal Hassan and that massacred Fort Hood could have easily been prevented?
That was workplace violence. Now, come on.
But the fact is, we can't defend ourselves against this ideology.
Tamara is angry at you right now. She's making her
mad,
faces.
But wait, this is my final point. So many people are afraid to come forward because they're called dangerous people. They're called Islamophobes. They're called racists. But we're the ones on the side of the victims, including Muslims. We have to stand up against Islam and what the left does. What the left does is call.
That is a dangerous statement.
No. Let me finish.
Yes.
I have 2 sentences.
It is not Islam.
Let me finish.
It is the bad people that are dangerous.
Let me finish. What the left
You've made your point,
No,
sir.
I haven't made my point. I have 2 sentences. The paradigm that the left has created is if you stand up for the victims of Islam, you're told that you hate Muslims. This is BS. We are on the side of all people, including Muslims. We're not haters. The people who are haters are the people that are defending this ideology and allowing the victimization of all innocent people.
Where you are wrong, Jamie. Where you are
enabling jihad.
Can I finish?
You are enabling jihad. And your hands are soaked in the blood of the victims of Islam.
Can I finish my statement, Jimmy?
You are a disgusting person.
Oh, I wouldn't say disgusting. The statements you made are very bad. It is not Islam. It is the bad people that are bad.
I'm so tired of listening to this argument.
Then learn something new.
No, you learn something new. No, you learn.
It is not Islam.
I heard you.
Not Islam.
Then why,
it is the people that are bad.
Why are the jihadists constantly?
I am a Muslim. I follow Islam. Islam is not dangerous. People are
Why are the jihadists constantly quoting the verses from the Quran? What does Surah 9:5 mean? What does Surah 9:29 mean? What does the verse of the sword mean? Start standing up for the victims of Islam instead of enabling jihad against the victims.
We'll go back to the
you
corners.
Now, hang on. Egging them on. That is wrong, Jamie.
Poor Amber was right in the middle, so we're going to go to you. You okay?
I'm sorry, Amber.
All right, go ahead.
No, I just want to say that exactly what Tamara and Kirsten were saying is that the political correctness surrounding this issue is killing us. it is weakening our nation and including our national security. It's putting us at risk that so many Americans don't want to face the reality surrounding this issue, and they're scared to talk about it. And that's what's going to hurt us in the future when we just talked about these future attacks in New York.
The moment Johar Tsarnaev started talking about the Islamic theology that inspired him, Holder sent those people in, gave them Miranda, and shut them up because they don't want to know the truth.
We got to come back. We'll continue, and we have predictions, closing thoughts from our audience right after the break as the special Hannity investigation continues. Radical Muslims on the march. Straight ahead. And welcome back to this audience edition of Hannity. Radical Muslims on the march. We bring back our studio audience. Pam Geller, we haven't talked a lot about the treatment. We got into this debate earlier with Brigitte, but the treatment of women under Sharia. Republicans are often accused of engaging in a war on women. I don't hear the left talking a lot about the treatment of women under Sharia.
No. As a matter of fact, anyone that does work with Muslims, former Muslims, I receive upwards of 20 emails a week from Muslims in other countries asking me for help, asking me to get out. You never hear their stories. And the fact that the name calling, which you witnessed here, the name calling, dangerous, 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 disgusting. This is what they do. This is the art of the smear. Even the young woman that was debating Brigitte, Brigitte really did sort of pull her out when she said all of the Muslims that were killed by the smears post 9/11. And even yesterday, Bratton, New York Police Department commissioner, said that he was going to assign extra security to mosques. Extra security mosques and give police guides to Islam and the 5 pillars. This in the wake of the guy who said, "I'll see you in New York." That's the response.
Look, I just want to say that we did not deliver democracy on a silver platter to Iraq. Iraq was invaded. They didn't ask to be invaded. And the instability that we're dealing with today is the result of tensions that go back even before that election.
Isn't it also because we left too early?
I do not want...
You don't acknowledge that?
They were harboring terrorists.
I think
they were a danger to America.
How long were we going to stay if Maliki didn't want us there and wouldn't give us a SOFA agreement? We have immunity in those countries. We would not get it in Iraq, and George Bush could have gotten that agreement and didn't.
Sean, I want to go back to Gitmo and this friendly neighborhood jihadist that they let out, Mr. I'll see you in New York. A lot of people that listen to my radio program go, what the heck are they doing here? What are they going to do when these terrorists end up detonating some sort of a nuclear device in one of our cities? And it turns out it may have been one of those people that we held down in Gitmo. People are scratching their heads going, what the heck is going on here? Why wasn't that guy put right back into Gitmo after he made that comment about see you in New York?
One thing we haven't talked about is my immediate concern are the Americans that are in Iraq, embassy employees and others that now have to rely on this president to save them. He announced to the nation on Thursday and to the world that he was not going to put boots on the ground at all under any circumstances in Iraq. So we now have fellow Americans there who are at great risk you know, they have to rely on the guy who couldn't take care of our folks in Benghazi. So those are the immediate people that are at risk that I'm concerned about.
I think that has to be our primary concern. I think that there's more than enough blame to go around to both parties in terms of how Iraq has been handled. We empowered the Shia. They had been out of power since the Ottoman Empire, essentially. They are the majority the way Iraq has been constructed. The fact that Maliki is just a tool of Iran should be no surprise to anybody. And I think it begs the question of what we haven't been doing about Iran. Iran is on its way to having nuclear weapons. This P5+1 agreement is an absolute sham. It's an absolute sham.
I think we are looking at the beginning of what's going to be a generational war between Shiites and Sunnis. It's going to be fueled by Arab oil money. It's going to go from country to country, tribe to tribe. It's not going to respect borders. So as an American, I look at the region and say, what are my strategic interests? What matters to Americans? Oil, terrorists, Israel. We want their oil. We don't want their terrorists. We want Israel to survive. Is there any way we can achieve those other than, I think, energy independence?
You and I are on the same page. We needed to go in those 3 directions. But, guys, hang in there. We're going to come back. We have more Hannity coming up right after this break. And that is all the time we have left this evening. I want to thank all of you in our studio audience, even you, Tamara. Hi. No, thank you all for being with us and joining us for this special edition of Hannity Tonight. Radical Muslims on the march. We hope you have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday.